Welcome to Three Questions, where critical thinking is king. And my opinions and research are only here to support your learning and deeper understanding. Hey, I'm your host, Meghann, and I'm so honored you clicked on Three Questions today so we can talk about stability, or maybe lack thereof. So rather than a big, long introduction, I kind of want to get right into it. So question one, what does stability mean to you? Think about it. What does the term stability mean to you? And it doesn't have to be in the framework of movement, maybe in life. Like, what is a stable person? Well, I think if I'm being honest, my gut is to be like, oh, a stable person is a person who's kind of always there and can adapt to any situation. But now, as I'm getting older and in my 40s and have had more life experience, I think a stable person isn't somebody who's always steady and seems like they have it all together. To me, it's the person that can respond appropriately, not always perfectly, but can be vulnerable in a way that's not weird, vulnerable in a way that's honest, someone you can count on, someone that shows up, someone that responds and doesn't react. And that's something I've been really exploring personally over the past, I think I first started really talking about this a few years ago on social media. And it was I would pop off in the car. If somebody cut me off, kind of lose my shit in a way that was all right, you're doing too much. And I was realizing it was happening more and more with kind of students or just anything in life. I noticed I was doing it more to my mother, which kind of sucks because I would snap at her and then I'd have to call back and apologize. But it all boiled down to, I was overwhelmed. I was tired. I had a lot going on. And rather than dealing with all those little parts, I would react really fast. And it kind of reacted with anger. I remember when we first got Willie, Mariska reminded me of this the other day when we were thinking about getting another beagle puppy. Is I would be fine, but if Willie had an accident in the house, peed, I would totally lose my shit in a way that was not okay. Now, it didn't hurt anybody else. It was just hurting me because usually it was just me home having to clean up the pee. But I had to kind of self-reflect and realize, although people might describe me as being stable, or maybe they didn't, is I was always there. I did show up for people. I could handle a lot, but I wasn't responding very well. I was reacting. So if this kind of resonates with you, something I ask myself now is, am I responding or am I reacting? And just for clarity, because I do think language matters, but I hate putting value on words, is for me, responding is in a way that's not emotional. It's thoughtful. It's kind of taking a step back and being oh, how do I really feel about this situation? Reacting is shooting from the hip, going hard in the paint, and just giving it to people straight. I'm putting air quotes. No, because it's all emotion to me. So maybe that doesn't resonate with you and you're no, I never react like that. You're a crazy person. Well, fine. So what does stability mean to you? What do you look for in a stable friend, a stable partner, a stable business partner? All those things. And now I want to get into kind of what's more meaningful to me and most of my audience, because it's mostly movement professionals. What does stability mean to you in movement? And maybe a better question is, what does stability feel like in your body? So I'll be honest, something that really annoys me on social media is when people will be giving an exercise and they're this is an exercise for shoulder stability or hip stability, when they're mobilizing or moving the hip. Now, we could argue that in order to better stabilize and react, we've got to have both sensory input and motor control of said joints. So yeah, your hip is not going to stabilize well if you can't move it. So they do interact, but I just feel like that's super confusing to our clients and to other movement practitioners. So I have, over the past, I don't know, it's been a while since we've had the advanced course at the Neuro Studio. It was before Brian and I got married. Oh my God, why can I never remember our anniversary? I'm not a bad wife. I remember we met in 2011 on July 4th. So I always think that is our anniversary. There's a painting on the wall. 2017, I believe, is the year we got married. Okay? Anyway, not important. So I think it was 2015 or 2016 we started teaching the advanced course, really helping people identify and assess for reflexive stability. Now, some of you might have heard me talk about reflexive stability. Now, why I separate the two is because I'm trying to separate the work we do at the Neuro Studio from what everybody else is doing that is not, in my opinion, accurate. Okay? That's an opinion right there. I haven't studied everybody else's work in detail, so I'm not going to cherry pick and pick people out. What I am just saying is, to me, stability should occur when a force or demand is placed upon it. So if I'm trying to overhead press with my right arm, well, my hip joints and hopefully my opposite shoulder joint can stabilize so I can mobilize this right arm. Now, if my hip joints and shoulder joint, the glenohumeral, let's talk about the ball in the socket specifically. And if you're not a movement professional, our shoulder is made up of kind of 4 joints. I'm talking about the most mobile joint in the body, your glenohumeral. That's your upper arm bone where it fits into that little ball and socket thing. So yeah, you can still pressure arm over your head without stabilizing at those other 3, what I call quadrants. Okay. But where that can lead us to brain mapping issues or to compensatory patterns that can lead to injury. Our body's supposed to compensate. So everybody needs to chill. But for me, if we cannot stabilize at our 4 most mobile joints in the body, in this instant, we're talking about 3 because 1 is moving. That is a big cognitive and protective load the brain has to accommodate for. Okay. So people ask me, why, when you're doing your 4 quadrant stability model, which is a model I created for assessments, why those 4 joints? And I'm like, because they're the 4 most mobile joints in the body that nobody is able to isolate, differentiate, and stabilize at. And people are like, oh no, I can stabilize. And then we break down the film and I show them and they're like, holy crap, I am moving at that joint. I'm like, I know. And they're like, but I didn't feel like I was. I'm like, I know. Because question 1B, what does stability feel like in your body? I think we've got it all wrong, guys. So what I'm saying is what we think stability feels like isn't actually what it is. Let me be more specific. So a lot of people think that stability feels like a muscle really burning or muscles really working hard, or other people feel like good stability is muscles aren't working hard. Or say you're hypermobile or have a connective tissue disorder, or you're in a sport like dance or gymnastics or other sports that you have to overmobilize joints to make a pretty shape. Well, you're not going to have as much sensation in those areas because you've trained yourself out of them, or maybe you never had them in the first place. So when students ask me, what does reflexive stability feel like? Now, if you're not watching on YouTube, I'm going to describe what I'm doing. I'm making a weird face and shaking my fingers like, woo, woo. Why I do that, and I usually follow it up by something really snarky, and I say, what does happiness feel like to you? And they kind of laugh. I'm like, no, seriously, what does happiness feel like to you? And they look at me, and they're like, what does happiness feel like to you? I was like, I don't know. This isn't about me. It's about you. And then I go, to be honest, I think it's hard to create words to explain what happiness feels in my body. To me, happiness feels like the perfect amount of cognitive load. Happiness to me is filled with laughter, but not forced laughter. Like that low belly chuckle, my abs are going to hurt tomorrow. Now, maybe laughter isn't a part of your happiness. Maybe happiness is quiet. For all my parents out there, happiness might be seeing your kids succeed. And I always ask people to go deeper. Is like, okay, if you can't rely on anybody else to make you happy, what does happiness feel like? And I did this with my mentees one year, and I sat and thought on it for a while. And everybody kind of came up a little empty. And then I said, guys, this might sound pathetic, but do you know what really makes me happy? And they're like, what? And I was like, laundry. And they're like, say less, but say more. And I said, hold on, hear me out. It wasn't laundry, but what I realized is how my brain works. There's a lot coming in and out at all times. I call it organized chaos. But for me, completion, the sense of completion of a task and being focused on the process makes me feel grounded. And I think feeling grounded is happiness to me right now. Now you might be like, oh my God, that's sad that feeling grounded makes her happy. Well, it does. And the thing about laundry is I don't think laundry is like throwing shit in the washer and then forgetting it for 2 days and it gets mildew and then you have to wash it again and do the dryer. For me, when I do laundry, I wash, I dry, I fold, and I put away. And if you ask my husband, I am very anal when it comes to folding. I have a way that I even fold fitted sheets that is a perfect square. I joke it's my first job at Abercrombie & Fitch when I was in college. And if you're young, Abercrombie & Fitch, it was cool when I worked there. At least I thought it was. Maybe it wasn't. Anyway, we had to fold everything perfectly and then smoosh it. But because my brain works so fast and takes so many things in, I love my closet and my clothes to be neat and orderly. When you come to my house, I have renovated a whole room to just be my closet, and it looks like you're shopping. I have it set up so everything is kind of color-coded, organized in a way. Because if my closet is a mess, it's just added cognitive load. And remember, I said happiness is the perfect amount of cognitive load. So think about those little things that make you happy. And you might be like, hi, I thought we were talking about stability. I'll get to the point. Okay. But I think it's really important to critically think and identify, what do these words mean to me? Now, you can identify happiness and stability completely different than I do. All I'm asking you in today's episode is to think about it. Try to put it in your own words. Define it. Define it wrong. Define it weird. Find the right words. I mean, for years, I laughed at people trying to define Pilates. And Joseph Pilates says he wanted you to, I'm going to screw up the quote. I do quotes backwards. But it was like to develop your body uniformly. Okay, great. For me, developing uniformly is letting the body work as a system where no one part is working harder than the other. And in that, our larger joints, more mobile joints, need to do their job. If smaller joints and smaller parts are doing the job of the bigger ones, we're going to have problems eventually. So for me, in order to get that uniform development, I think Pilates is mobilizing certain parts of the body while other parts reflexively stabilize with respect to the spine. So we move the spine, flex, extend, laterally flex. And when we're moving the spine, we need certain areas to be stable so we can move it. Okay? Then when we're trying to move our limbs, we need our spine to reflexively stabilize in flexion, in extension, in neutral, upside down and backwards. I want your body to respond no matter what position you're in. And I want it to respond, not react, because to me, react can lead to pain. React is a gripping pattern. Sometimes we need to react because we've got to get a job done right now. Like say I'm like doing pictures and I have to like be in a position for a longer than I want. Well, I'm going to calm my face, look really relaxed, and I might engage my abs really deep to help my brain feel safe in that position. But that's not life, okay? So just take the time. Do me a favor. I want you to think about what stability means to you, and don't go teaching it like it's gospel to people, okay? I want you to think about what it means to you. I want you to find if there's research to support that. I want you to poke holes in your theory. Because even when I first developed the 4-quadrant stability model, and we're talking about reflexive stability, I realized when teachers would come visit me, they weren't stabilizing, they were gripping. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. In the effort to get people to respond, maybe they're anticipatory reacting. Damn it. And then I didn't want to make gripping like the worst thing people could do, because then I like vilified gripping, not intentionally, but gripping, nobody's going to die from you gripping your abs or clenching your glutes while you're doing something, but it's going to inhibit the other movement patterns, right? So again, we don't want gripping patterns, but if they're occurring, we could use that as an assessment to say, hey, maybe if I change the sensory environment, I can get a different motor output where they don't have to clench their butthole, okay? So teachers, I'm just going to encourage you. It is okay to teach your work. I do it every day. But please stop acting like your opinions are gospel. Also, please poke holes in your theory. Find research to support it, and I dare you to find research that goes against your theories. If you have the courage to do that, to me, you are a true leader. And you've got the confidence to be like, yeah, I could be right or I could be wrong. The one thing I know about stability is it's completely misunderstood. And now people are saying it's not important. Oh, bitch, it is important. It is very important. But just because we don't understand it doesn't mean it's not important. We don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I've spent my whole career creating this assessment model, a moving model, but it's constantly adjusting, right? And why I created this model is I'm like, how can we better identify if people are stabilizing? Okay? Not because I am right or wrong, but because, God, I really think if we can figure this out, people will move with more ease. So join me in this journey. Give me your opinions. Tell me what you're thinking about, because we can't do this by ourselves. All right? So before I move on to question 2, think about what those questions mean. What does stability mean to you in both movement, in a partner, in life, in a friendship? How does it feel in your body? Well, to me, stability feels like complete distribution of load. And as somebody who never felt that in their body, oh my God, movement was always difficult for me. And now I can do it with great form, and I feel my body working, and I can stay focused. Now, if you always had that distribution of load, like my husband, like who's an athlete, that might not resonate with you because you've always felt that. As you get older and you stop doing your sports, you're going to feel what distribution of load losing it feels like, and it don't feel good. So do me a favor, just think about it. Comment on the post, DM me, send me a carrier pigeon. I am really curious. Okay? So, question 2. Are you teaching your clients to react to a unique environment? Or are we just teaching them to complete a certain exercise? And can both be important? Man, maybe you thought I was going in a different way with that question. You know, I was got to throw a curveball at you. There's like these 2 schools of thought, like, oh, I'm going to just teach functional movements and I want my client to be able to do all these functional tasks. And then there are these people, no, I want my clients to do these certain exercises, or they want to get really good at Pilates. And to me, Pilates is a practice. If you want to get good at Pilates, you've got to practice those movements. Can they translate into life and other exercises? Yes, but so can CrossFit, so can yoga. So I think both are important because we might want to, the beautiful thing about a practice is we start at the bottom and we get better at it. I love being focused on the process. To me, I can equate all my success that did not come until, oh God, my mid-30s? I don't know. I think I was focused on the goals for a lot of the beginning of my career, and it looked like success from the outside. I had a Pilates studio when I was 24. I owned it for 5 years. I sold it. I've got a master's degree from Columbia. I'm now doing a doctorate. I have 2 successful businesses, the Neuro Studio and the Koppele method. Yeah, on paper, but I wasn't stable back then. I wasn't grounded because I was always focused on the goal. In the past kind of 10 years, I really honestly, I think it was watching Tom Brady. And I grew up a Giants fan. I kind of, oh my God, this is like terrible. Everybody's going to freaking hate me. Like I am now an Eagles fan, mostly because I grew up a Giants fan. It's like maybe you realize that as an adult, you don't want to be that religion anymore. I found the Eagles games to be more fun. My husband's an Eagles fan. I don't want the Giants to lose, but I also don't love how they run their team. So yeah, Giants fans, sorry, I have switched teams. And you might think I'm not a loyal person, but I can't control your thoughts about me. But back to my point. So anyway, Giants and Eagles, we don't like the Patriots, okay? Sorry, Boston people. But I respect Tom Brady. What an athlete. He was like a 6th-round draft pick. He was not a star. He worked his butt off. And what I realized is he would win Super Bowl after Super Bowl, but he just never looked happy. And it's like, oh my God, well, how do you feel the day after a Super Bowl? Well, you got to do it the next year. You've got to climb that mountain again. And I experienced that when Mariska and I used to travel once a month to teach workshops. I get up there, everybody's excited to hear from me. They clap. It's like this big deal. And then I go home and I'm like, there was this like level of like, I don't want to say depression because I've experienced that too and it was different. It just kind of felt like flat affect, not great. So what I realized is if I'm always focused on the goals, I am never going to be happy. Well, every time I reach this goal, I taught in Japan, Dubai, I've taught in Australia, all over the world. Why aren't I happy? Well, because we're just checking boxes. And ever since I focused on the process, there has been such a level of enjoyment in my work. I wake up every day excited. Okay, not every day. Most days excited. And on those days I don't wake up excited, I'm going to share with you my mantra. I literally say this to myself. And one of my students, Frederica, who was traveling with me to see clients, I said it out loud in the car and she kind of looked at me. I said, I am so blessed to be able to do what I love every day, even when I'm tired. Because I don't want to do this every day, but I'm so lucky I get to. Okay? So I really believe in focusing on the process. So going back to Tom Brady, he then became a sportscaster. And frankly, he was not that good at the beginning. And I give him so much credit for sticking it out because we watch a lot of football. I'm married to a football coach. And I was like, man, Tom Brady's getting a lot better at this. And I don't know him, but I assume he kind of focused on the process, got better on it. And Tom Brady, if you want to share your secrets with the 3 questions followers, please let us know. So all that being said, I think it's great to have a practice. Maybe you want to do CrossFit. Maybe you want to do Pilates. Maybe you want to do yoga and get better at it as a practice and enjoy the process. That is amazing. But we also have to, as movement professionals, make sure clients understand that that specific cue was in that moment in time. What I focus on in my work is getting people to focus on a sensory input. So when you're doing that exercise, what is your brain focusing on? How can we replicate that movement, right? In certain types of movements. I call it go and flow state. When you're in go state, that means it's time to learn. We need a new movement pattern. We're either in pain or we're having trouble focusing. We need to lock in. We need to be strict about our sensory inputs. And then when we're in flow state, I just want my students to go. Do a workout, move around. Don't assume you're going to do it wrong, and then just check in when you're struggling. Okay? Not every day has to be a neuroplasticity session where we're over-focused on sensory input. So ask yourself, do you want to be a teacher that's focusing on letting clients react to a unique environment? Or do you want to be a teacher that's focused on the process and that you want them to perfect a certain skill? I think you can be both, but I want you to really decide what you want to do with this work. And then, no matter what you're doing, can you assess if they are actually stabilizing when you are asking them to mobilize? And how do you know this? Well, if you're going to give them an exercise, I'd love you to step back and ask yourself, what should be stabilizing here? I do this to my students all the time, especially in complex movements. We were doing cat-cows and they're like, hip stability. I'm like, nope, your hip joint's mobilizing. We're moving the pelvis around the leg. They're like, is it knees, elbows, feet and hands? I'm like, sure, sure, and sure. And then I go, do they all have to stabilize for the person to do a cat-cow? And they're like, no. Well, maybe we look at those areas that should be stabilizing and decide what area that's not stabilizing is moving the most. Maybe we can create a sensory environment or give them cues to bring awareness to that part and keep it moving. Okay? So, moving on to question 3, which I am not going to go into detail because I really want you to think about this. Why do you believe your cues or your approach is correct? Why? Is it because you've tested it? Maybe peer-reviewed studies, or just tested it on your clients? Have you challenged yourself and adjusted based off mistakes? Or is it because somebody you trust, like me or one of your other mentors, told you to do it? Or because it felt good in your body? Okay, I asked a lot of questions within a question. So why do we believe the way we teach is correct? Right? And it always amazes me, like, everybody's like yelling on social media, like, this is the right way, everybody else is wrong. And I'm like, well, how do you know that? To me, everybody's a little right and everybody's a little wrong, including myself. Right? Freeing yourself from always being correct is like the best feeling. It's not that hard to do. So if you are teaching the way you do, maybe it's classical Pilates or CrossFit or yoga, because your mentor or a teacher you admire told you to do that and it was correct, you need to question that. That's not disrespectful to your teacher. Questioning me is not disrespectful. It actually tells me you care. It actually tells me you want to also be a leader. And I'm all for that. But I think a lot of times it's because somebody we trusted told us it was correct and it felt good, in air quotes, in our body. No, I did air quotes because sometimes we determine things are good because it felt different. Maybe we felt a muscle we never felt before and we just decided that was good, right? So what I want you to think about, am I teaching this way because so-and-so gave me this cue and it changed my world? Well, not everybody's like you. Does everybody define happiness the same way you do? Does everybody define pain the same way you do? Does everybody define stability the same way you do? No. And on the flip side of it, if you believe what you're teaching is correct because you've tested it and you continually to challenge it, keep doing that. But don't be so distrusting of everybody else who has an opinion, right? I notice also, I tend not to scroll on social media because I tend to get reactive, and that's not the person I want to be. And I get reactive when I see people being very black and white and they're telling you, don't be black and white as they're being black and white. It's the hypocrisy that annoys me, okay? But they are trying to share their beliefs because it has really helped them or they think it has. I think the biggest turning point for me is someone who I actually really like, but I know who lives in a lot of pain and has a lot of health issues, also has a lot of opinions on how other people should live and move. And I'm thinking, well, maybe we should clean up home first before we start giving. Now, it doesn't mean we're not allowed to have pain, problems at home and stuff like that. Don't get me wrong. But I think it could be dangerous working out our problems on other people. Okay? So, to sum this all up, I'm going to start with the last question first. To bring this to stability, is your approach with stability or how you cue stability based off how somebody else taught you and just felt good in your body? Well, I want to encourage you to critically think on why that made you feel good. What was the cue? Did the cue change from a sensory approach to your brain and body that changed the motor output? And instead of giving just that cue, can you maybe say, oh my God, bringing sensory awareness to my visual system or to the joints that were moving when they shouldn't have, that changed my life So this specific cue worked for me because it brought awareness to my brain. Or maybe you're like, no, from a biomechanical perspective, that is a amazing cue and I'm going to use it all the time. Great. But also critically think and poke holes in the other end. And my critical thinkers, myself included, I'm giving myself this advice, is just because you're a critical thinker doesn't mean you're still not judgmental. We can be judgmental and a critical thinker. But usually when I'm judgmental, it's something that I'm working on being more clear about. And I don't have the words for yet. But they'll come or they won't, and I'll survive. So working our way backwards, using this idea of stability and not relying on cues because people told us. Can we adapt our teaching or maybe be more clear about our teaching? Are we focusing on the process and trying to improve a body of work? Or are we teaching clients how to react to a unique environment? Can we do both? Can we have certain sessions for each? And I think if you delineate those two, but also put them back together, you will have such a deeper understanding of what you do. And again, the other secret to my success is always focusing on the process and being clear about what the hell I'm doing. I'm always like, why am I doing that? What is the purpose there? Why am I doing this podcast? Well, for me, I'm working on being more streamlined in my explanations, which I am noticing I am over my 30 minutes. So I need to be more concise. And number 2 is to share the work I teach in my courses, add a way to make it more accessible to people. So last but not least, continually think about what stability means to you, what it feels like in your body, and question, are we responding or are we reacting? Are we anticipating or are we letting the force or demands come onto us and we adjust as we need to? I find a better understanding of stability and movement has made me much more stable in life. And I'm going to grip here and there. I'm going to react, but I'm pretty sure I'm also human and so are you. So I hope today's episode got you thinking about stability, asking more questions, and again, share with me your thoughts here. It's only a definition because someone decided it will be. Together, we can change the definition. All right, guys, I'll see you next time. Keep kicking butt.